Emotionally unavailable.
Welcome to Emotionally Unavailable, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of emotional availability and intimacy. I'm your host, Melissa Hepner, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have you join me on this journey of self-discovery and connection. Whether you're navigating the complexities of relationships or exploring your own emotional landscape, this podcast is here to inspire, empower, and entertain. So get cozy and let's explore the depths of human emotions together. Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today's guest is Jim Marshall, who is a polymathic intellectual who has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multiple dimensions of human potential and development. He received a classical education as an honor student at a Jesuit military prep school, was accepted into engineering school while still a junior in prep school, and attended college on academic scholarship. He graduated college with a Bachelor of Science cum laude. While still an undergraduate, he began the study of alternative arts and sciences, which today would be described as transformational and holistic. Eventually, he became a professional practitioner, and after 28 years of formal education, had a long career as a human development engineer. Jim has integrated the best aspects of the most advanced techniques on the planet and expanded their limits by his own research and discovery. He has successfully treated and or trained hundreds of clients over a 40-year career and is the inventor of Septemics and several consciousness-expanding systems. His areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, music, organization, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, and education. So, I wanted to read off his actual profile because damn, the dude is fucking accomplished. So, Jim has actually discovered unknown natural phenomena, and he has published a very well-received book called Septemics and Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. So you're going to hear us talk all about that. He is so smart and so interesting. And I bought the book, just so you know. Started to read a little bit of it. Haven't had a lot of time, but I'm going to let the episode speak for itself because it's amazing. And I don't know, I feel like this is going to be very helpful for neurodivergent people who just have such a hard time understanding other people and motivations and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this. And I'll make sure to include Jim's website in the show notes, and I hope you guys will check it out. His book is on Amazon too. That's where I bought it. I actually bought the Kindle version because it was cheaper. But he was really cool, and I'm really excited. And he actually invited me to come to a roundtable discussion about this book, and I'm really excited about that. So anyway, I hope that you love Jim as much as I do. I think you will. He's so cool. And I'm just excited to know that work like this is out there. So anyway, I guess that's it for me. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing well. Went on a 6-mile walk today, training for walking the half marathon for the Oklahoma Memorial situation that we do every year. I used to run the half every year, and I do not enjoy running anymore, so I don't do it, but I am trying to be more active. So went with my homegirl, anonymously unavailable with Jane Doe, you know her. Went with her. So anyway, we're on a mission to be, active and healthy and shit. So, okay. Well, I guess that's all from me. I hope that you have a marvelous and magical Monday. And just remember, you have everything you need inside of you. And don't question that. All right. Love you. Here's me and Jim.
Emotionally unavailable.
Okay. Well, hello. It's nice to meet you. Do you go by Jim?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm Melissa. So before we get into what the heck Septemics is, I would like to know, what is your backstory? What made you get to that place where you wanted to do that? Because, I find that people who go real hard on studying one thing had a specific incident or experience that really just made them want to overcome a certain challenge or something. So I just wonder, what's your deal?
You want me to say that now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the first thing I should say to give context is that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics. I
Uh-huh.
published it in the book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Now, to answer your question, I don't know how far back you want me to go,
Whatever you want, man.
but let me say this. I have no memory of a time in this life when I was not intensely interested in learning everything taught in every university.
Wow.
Now, of course, that's impossible, but the drive has always been there.
Yeah.
So I loved school. I went to school for 28 years, and eventually it led me to becoming a polymathic intellectual, which is the best description for who I am now. Uh, Now, I can still remember the exact moment when I first discovered that some children didn't like school. I was shocked. I'm standing at
Mm-hmm.
the chalkboard doing arithmetic with another student, and he said something that I didn't understand. And I said, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You mean you don't like school? He said, no, I hate school. I couldn't believe it. I said, now I'm understanding the other students better. So
Yeah.
that's sort of, who I am as a person. Uh, as far as getting to Septemics more specifically, the story really starts when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16.
Holy God.
So now, of course, at the time, I thought that I was going to be engineering physical things such as airfoils and motors and gears and things. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche
Yeah.
because it is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably.
Mm-hmm. You're so right.
95% of the problems that people have in industrialized society are because they don't understand people.
Yeah.
Don't, don't understand the wife, don't understand the boss, don't understand the employee, don't understand somebody who's running for office. That's why more than 50% of the people who get married in the United States get divorced.
Yeah.
They clearly couldn't understand what they were looking at, or
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't have done that. So, to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one on one with hundreds of clients for cumulatively thousands of hours using engineering tactics, strategies, principles, devices, concepts, and so forth to bring enlightenment and improve responsibility and success to my clients.
Yeah. Did you end up like, well, I would like to start with this.
Yeah.
When you were in school and you were loving every minute of it, were
Yes.
you not? Because what I find that people really, aside from like learning disabilities or some things just being extra challenging, they're very bogged down by the social aspect of school. And am I received well? Am I accepted by my peers? And when they're not, that can go really south too. Were you disconnected from your peers?
Oh,
Like
no.
and you felt like you could make friends easily and all that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
just really loved to learn.
I always had friends. Uh, and of course, when I was in elementary school, I was like the smartest kid in the school. But
Obviously.
when I went to an elite prep school where you had to take a test to get in, and so then for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by other students who were at my level.
And was that beneficial for you?
Was it beneficial? Oh,
Yeah. Did you
absolutely.
like it?
Absolutely. I loved it.
Good.
I
Okay. Yeah.
loved it. Really, I mean, because it's a prep school, the whole point is you go there to prepare for college. So obviously, it was always intended to me I was going to go. So by senior year, well, now I have to go to college, which I did. But Other than that, I would have been happy to just stay there.
Really? You were
Yeah.
just learning and loving. I love
I,
that.
yeah.
Well, because I find that, like, especially like when my oldest son, really smart, wouldn't call himself that. But when he got into honors classes in high school and saw other really smart people, he started to
Yeah.
make negative comparisons between
Uh-huh.
himself and them. So that's why I
Uh-huh.
asked that question, because I'm glad to hear that you didn't have that experience. But
Didn't have that.
I think it must be a common one. But that's so cool. I mean, I'm happy for you, because I've known lots of really brilliant people who really struggled to make connections interpersonally, and you've never had that. I love that.
Never had that. But I'll tell you, as far as being a polymath, which is where I wound up, uh, I liked every subject. I liked every course. I liked learning everything. And I did well in all of them. So what I found by the time I was about 13 or 14, I figured out that I had to have separate groups of friends. Like I had one group of friends with whom I would attend science, science and math lectures. And I had a different group of friends with whom I would attend plays and poetry readings. And then I had another group of friends with whom I would play sports. And I had another group of friends with whom I would play music, et cetera, et cetera. And none of these people could stand one another.
Right. No, that's so fair. Yeah. I'm blown away by this, like that you could fit into each of those groups. Like, I'm
Yeah,
going to ask a really weird question right now,
yeah.
because I know nothing about the things you're talking about, and I'm very interested. Do
Uh-huh.
you just like have access to more parts of your brain than other people do?
Well, I don't know about the brain. I mean, how could one know about one's own brain? I mean, I suppose after I die, they could do an autopsy,
I wish
but
they
I, but I,
would.
but I can tell you, but I can tell you this: I had a photographic memory.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what I would do is, when I would take a test, I would literally, in my mind, turn to the page in the book where the answer was, and just copy it out onto the paper.
Wow.
So,
Wow. But you
so
were also interested in arts, and you were interested
yes,
in sports, and you could
yes,
perceive them and conceive them and actually engage in them. That
yes,
is just amazing to me that you could do all of those things.
yeah. Yeah, I was pretty much good at everything I did. I was a very good athlete. I was a very good musician. I mean, by the time I was 17, I was writing poetry in Latin for recreation.
Of course you were. Have you come across very many people like you that could
No,
actually be that good at things? Yeah, I didn't think
no.
so.
And I can tell you that a lot of people rejected me, or didn't like me or whatever you want to call it because of this. And
Yeah.
I'll give you an anecdote along those lines. I was once dating a girl, and she was sort of in with her own group of friends from before I met her. And she said, well, we get together and we play. There was some game that back then, uh, Trivial Pursuit was the name of the game, right?
Oh,
Would you like to join us? I said,
oh
sure,
my gosh.
because, I like everything. So,
Yeah.
so I showed up. They wound up kicking me out of the group
Because you
because
could answer everything.
I could answer every question, and there would be this obscure answer, that nobody knew, you know, like who is the 16th president of the United States? And I would tell them,
Yeah, you're like, oh, I know that without
what's
even
the
thinking.
formula? What's the formula for the volume of a cube? Whatever it was, and I would tell them. So they just said, we're not playing with you anymore. So
Yeah.
something like I've actually had a lot of women tell me, you're too smart for me. I'm not going out with you.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Wow.
it happened many times. Now,
Wow.
yeah, and there were other times, but you have to realize that in my youth, I was a very good-looking, athletic guy. I was on the football team. And so, uh, but still, that was a deal breaker. You know, and sometimes they wouldn't actually tell me outright, but I could sort of see anyway
Yeah.
that
Well, I
there was
mean,
a there was
there's
a
no way
point.
you weren't perceiving everything around you. Like, you could see pretty
Right.
easily. people were responding to.
Right. There was like a point when something would happen, they would look at me, like I was actually tutoring a girl when I was 18. And she was a beautiful girl. And so, but I was brought in to tutor her. So I'm tutoring her in algebra. And it's at some point she stopped. Because, I had no trouble explaining these things to her. She stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you're really smart." And I knew right then that was the end of it with her.
She
knew
wasn't going
it.
to date you, huh?
I knew it. That was it. That was it. But I have to tell you, as a child, this was a problem for me.
Yeah. I mean, well, and that's why I'm like surprised. I cannot get over the fact that also you were able to have friendships too,
Yeah,
because
well,
people
yeah,
get so intimidated,
yes. It's not just intimidated. They get resentful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even when I was a little boy, I was always the smartest person in the room. And so an awful lot of people just didn't like me. They didn't want to hear about it. They didn't want to associate with me. They resented me.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, I wasn't inured enough to human society to figure out not to be like that.
Right.
Now, by the time I was like a teenager, I sort of learned, okay, I have to keep my mouth shut, and not go around letting people find
Yeah.
out how smart I am.
You started
Uh,
putting yourself in those boxes.
right, right.
Yeah. What was your
So
parents' response to you being so smart? Did they feel it challenging to keep you stimulated, or were they like resentful of
my,
your knowledge?
well, I would say this: my parents did not like me.
Okay.
They did not talk to me. They did not associate with me. I started school when I was 3, and they basically turned me over to the education system and just let me go. And I did.
Wow.
Like I'm sure I was told, like on the first day of the first grade, when you go home, do your homework. And I just did it for the rest of my life. Every day I went home and did my homework. It's like I never didn't do my homework. So I had very high grades and scholarships and all that. So they kind of just didn't pay attention to me. Like when I was 3, they said, "Wash your hands before you come to the table." And I did. And I just did it for the rest of my life. They never had to tell me twice.
Wow.
So they just sort of ignored me.
Yeah.
And but
Did they try to form like an emotional connection with you at all?
no,
They just really were not great, loving, nurturing parents at all?
no, no, not at all. Not at all. They were into their own thing. See, I was the 4th children in the family, the last one born.
Uh-huh.
So by the time I was born, my father was a rich man.
Okay.
And so he was very much into putting on his custom-made suits with the silk shirts, and he had about 100 bow ties, and he had a Homburg, the expensive hat.
Yeah.
And my mother was a trophy wife.
Oh,
She looked like a movie star.
yeah.
So, and he would go to all these fancy restaurants. And my father went on 38 cruises, just to give you an idea of what his interests were like. And
Wow.
when he wasn't on cruises, he was going to Vegas and gambling, or, that was his life. And being in with all these rich people who all had beautiful wives. And that's what he was interested. That's what they did.
Yeah. What about your siblings? Did you have a good relationship with them or no?
Yes, I
You
had a very
did?
good. Yes.
Good. Okay, good. So you had some connection.
Yeah. Uh, in general, I had a good connection with my family. Um, since I was the youngest one, I had 3 older siblings. I was able to keep up with them because I was very smart for my age.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that interested them interested me. And I generally thought of kids my own age as being like children.
Right. No, I've known kids like that. I totally
So
get
being around adults and older people, for example, in school, the teachers loved me.
Oh, I bet. That was one of the first things I thought was, oh, your
Yeah.
teachers loved you. So, especially because you could maintain sports and extracurriculars and still just do so well. Like
Yes.
they love that. They get to
Yes.
celebrate something.
Right. I was the only guy in the math club who was on the football team.
I know. I'm so blown away by this. I'm so serious. Like the more I hear about you, like being on the football team and doing all of these things, I've never actually met anyone in real life like you, and this is blowing my mind.
It was actually funny because by the time I guess I was 16 when I joined the math club, because by then I was a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't just a kid who liked math. I was a mathematician. So uh, our idea of fun was we got together one afternoon every week and did math problems. That was fun
Oh
for
my God, that's so great.
you know. Uh, so, but the funny thing is, I was this very sort of muscular. I looked like a football player. If
I
I
know. I
walked
feel
by,
like the
they'd say.
movie Good Will Hunting could have been written about you.
Anyway, the point is that. So I'm in this room with all these skinny guys with glasses, and
Yeah.
and I didn't wear glasses back then, and I had 20/10 vision, and so they all sort of looked at me like, "What is this guy
This
doing
guy.
here?"
Yeah.
They all thought I was. How did this? This must be a mistake. How did they let this guy in? But I was used to that by then. See, because I figured that out.
Right.
You know, by then that as long as we talked about math, we were fine. And I went through my whole life like that,
Yeah.
where I had things were segregated. Uh, and it's very easy for me to establish a rapport with almost anyone because I know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if I bump into some guy who's a baseball fan, we can get right into rapport because I was a baseball player and a baseball coach.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's going to think, I don't want to talk to this guy who's an engineer. I want to talk to him because we're into baseball, you see? So it's very easy for me to have an entree into many circles. But the big thing is that, uh, see, I did not think of myself as a polymath until fairly late in life. Because what happened was, I guess one day I realized, gee, I know all this stuff. In fact, a friend of mine once said to me, we're sitting in his living room, we're talking, just two guys, and he said to me, and again, there was like this pause, and he said, you know a lot of stuff. And at some point it clicked, and I said, I guess I'm a polymath. Well, prior to that, people had been describing me as a Renaissance man.
That makes
I never,
sense.
I never described myself that way, but they would. And so whatever people want to say about me is okay. I don't care what they say, good or bad. But uh, then and what happened was everything, I'm an expert in about 20 subjects. So in my mind, it's all one big blob.
Yeah.
There's no separation in my mind. So everything bleeds over into everything else. And that's sort of how I was as a kid.
Yeah.
For example, in school, I'd learn about Thomas Jefferson. So, who's this Thomas Jefferson? This is an interesting guy. And I'd go to the library and get out a biography and read the whole biography.
Oh my God, I love it.
So, and I would sort of do that with everything. Isaac Newton, who's this Isaac Newton guy? See, and then I would study Isaac Newton. So I was reading biographies of all kinds of famous people when I was a kid,
Yeah.
like going to
And
the
you have a
library.
photographic memory, so you remembered all of it.
Right. So I'd find out about, Stonewall Jackson, famous Confederate general. He was Lee's favorite general. So get the book, learned all about Stonewall Jackson, killed in the
Yeah.
Civil War. So, that's kind of what my life was like. So as far as getting to Septemics, in a way, all of that fed into this. Because if you get into Septemics, you'll find, it's an entirely new subject.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
And B, it's vast. Now, the students of Septemics that I have people all over the world studying this now, they're like continually blown away by this because it's deep, it's broad. So it's a life-changing experience when you get into Septemics. You're never going to be the same after that because the data in it. Well, one reviewer said in her review, this book was a real eye-opener. So that's, pretty much the way people respond to this book is they go, wow.
Wow, exactly. I mean, that's how I'm feeling about everything you've said so far. So,
Right.
okay, will you explain what it is?
Sure. So let me finish telling you how I got to it because that tells you what it is. So I had this long career as a human development engineer, okay? Working with hundreds of people of every description for thousands of hours. Now, all my clients improved as a result of our interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I started to notice incidentally that I could predict the outcome of the session.
Really?
With specificity.
Wow.
So like a guy would come to me and say, Jim, I heard about you. I'm having a lot of trouble with my wife. Can you help me? I say, sure. So we get into the session, and he doesn't know anything about what I do, how I think, all he knows is he's telling me about this, right? And I'm using biofeedback to guide him into his subconscious, and in 20 minutes he says, oh, now I see. My wife is just like my mother. No wonder we don't get along. Well, his relationship with his wife just got better, see? So that's what was happening all the time with my clients. So I started to notice that there were these patterns that would repeat. And I would not tell anyone, but I would write it down because that's what engineers do.
Right.
They observe a phenomenon, Now, when we use this fuel, we got 28 miles per gallon, but when we use this fuel, we got 30 miles per gallon. So I would make a note of that. See, that's what an engineer does. So that's what I was doing. I was making notes of these things. Now, of course, since I had a photographic memory, I didn't have to write a lot because it's all in my head anyway.
Uh-huh.
But still, as an engineer, you're supposed to write it down. So as the decades rolled by, it became obvious to me that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed. And as a result of our interaction, he'd go up to the next level. So a guy comes into me, and just by his speech and his behavior, I can see he's at this level on this scale. And we would work, and then he would go up to the next level. He didn't know anything about these levels. See?
Right.
Now, this happened thousands and thousands of times over a 40-year period. And every time it happened, it verified my hypothesis.
Right.
I just wrote it because they didn't know anything. They were completely in the dark about what I was doing, how I was doing it, what I was recording. So by 1995, I had simply observed and recorded about 32 scales of actual human phenomena. Because you have to realize, I would observe this in the session because I did that for a living.
Right.
And then I would go outside, when the session is over and I go out for dinner, and I would see people in the restaurant doing exactly the same thing, the same phenomena. So once I knew what it was there. Did you ever notice the thing about if you have a friend who gets a car that you didn't know about, like let's say a sunbeam, most people don't know about sunbeam, right? So I had a friend, he got a sunbeam, right? Well, after he got his sunbeam, I drove it, I wrote it. Then when I would see, there's a sunbeam. See, before that, I'm sure they went right by and I didn't know what they were, see?
Right.
But once I knew this, it was easy for me to see it because it's right there. So I had these 32 scales. Now I had one of these was a 6-level scale that by then I absolutely knew was correct. It was, it, so far as it went, it always worked.
Uh-huh.
Now, one day I was pondering a difficult client for some time, and I realized that that client was at a level on that scale that I had not previously observed. In
Ah.
other words, it had a seventh level. So as soon as I saw what that seventh level was, I knew where it fitted in the scale. That was not a question. And as soon as I inserted that seventh level into the sixth level scale, that scale at that moment manifested mathematically. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. All of these data jumped out at me that I wasn't even looking for.
Yeah.
And it went at that moment from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, which is a body of data. It like went woof. It opened itself up to me. And I looked at it and I could see it had all of these intersecting, interlocking mathematical factors in it. And I said, whoa, whatever the hell this is, it has to be natural law because it's got mathematics embedded in it. And anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. Like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
So then I said, whoa, I found something here. And then I thought, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have are also 7-level scales, but had not been developed all the way. Because you have to realize I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes.
Right. So you hadn't seen a seventh level in those scales, but now
Well,
you're understanding they probably exist.
I had some 7-level scales. As I said, they vary between 3 and 7, but most of them were not 7. So when I saw this go from being a line to a plane, I said, I'm going to look at these and see how many of these are actually 7-level scales. Now, because I knew what I was looking for, in a short period of time, each of these went to 7 levels. And when it did, it manifested mathematically. So in a short period of time, I had 32 7-level scales, all of which had mathematics embedded in them. And I said, whoa, this looks like a new subject. Because having gone to school for 28 years, I never saw anything like this.
Right.
But my next thing was, this could really help people. If I give this to people, this makes sense because it's not counterintuitive, it's intuitive because it's natural law.
Mm-hmm.
So people get this. So then I thought I could go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I had been doing as human development engineer, to helping people by the millions if I put this in a book and get it out. So I have to write a book. So the first draft was finished in December of 95.
Wow.
And I then sent it to colleagues of mine, all of whom had graduate degrees in a variety of subjects. And they all responded very positively. They had different responses, but distinctly positive responses. And that told me this is exactly what I think it is, a new subject that could really help people in their lives. I then spent the next 25 years of my life working on the book.
Wow.
Because you have to realize, first of all, I had to discover the phenomena. And I kind of already told you how that happened in the sessions.
Right.
But then when I realized that I had this new subject, I had to work on this. Now you have to realize there are 35 septemic scales, each of which has 7 levels. Because I found 3 more scales as I was writing the book. So that's 245 different levels. So these are specific human phenomena. So each of them had to be ascertained, verified, and then expressed in a way that would make sense to the average person. So I had to do that 245 different times.
Wow.
So After I had the phenomena, then I had to take that and I had to use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Because as an engineer, like every other engineer, I'm only interested in results and facts. To engineering, opinions and beliefs are utterly irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
In the engineering, you're not allowed to say, whoops. You can't just have the plane fall out of the sky and say, whoops, that one didn't work. You
Right.
can't do that. Whatever it is you're working on, an air conditioner, a car, a refrigerator, a cell phone, it's got to work. And it's got to work all the time for everybody. Because you don't know who's going to buy this thing, right? Everybody's
Right.
got a cell phone now. There's millions of engineers who've contributed to that technology over the past 50 years. So this thing had to work every time for every person. That was my standard.
Mm-hmm.
So that took 20 years because simply having the scale is not enough. You have to have a whole body of data, and then you have to be able to explicate how this works, why it works, why it's relevant, how you can use this right away to help your life. So that took 20 years. But the most time consuming part of this was expressing this in a way that would make sense to the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that I succeeded at that because some version of this book, excuse me, has existed for 29 years. And I've been watching people get this. They get it. So a guy opens the book and he looks at one of these 35 scales. Oh, scale of control. Oh, yeah, this makes sense. They get it right away. It's just like, can you remember the first time you looked at the periodic table of elements?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you were 13 or whatever in
Yeah, it was
science
sometime
class.
in junior high. I think I was in 8th or ninth grade.
Right. So you looked at it, right? And I'm sure, even if you're not a chemistry whiz, you said, oh, this makes sense. I see it. Hydrogen is one, helium is two, lithium is three, and it just goes down horizontally and vertically. It all fits together. It makes sense.
Right.
So even if you don't become a chemist, it's because it's natural law, it makes sense. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing with Newton's three laws of motion. If you study physics, you read them and you say, yeah, that makes sense. Now think about this. Before Dmitri Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry,
Right.
but he revolutionized it by making it easier to learn, easier to teach, and easier to understand. And so now every science book and every science classroom on Earth has that periodic table in it with all of the elements that were just added in as we learned them. There's now like
Mm-hmm.
125 elements or something like that. So it works. And that's why people use it. There's no getting away from that. Now,
Yeah.
several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And having gone to school for 28 years, I have to say in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before, at least on Earth. But,
Right.
but each one of these 35 scales is expressed in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. That's very similar to the periodic table of elements. So there are 35 subjects, each of which has a periodic table, and I'm giving it to you. If I may, I'd like to tell you the names of the 35 scales, and then
Yeah.
you know exactly what subject matter is addressed in the book.
Yeah.
So 24 of these scales are what I call individual scales, meaning they apply primarily to an individual person. And 11 of them I call group scales because they apply primarily to a group. And when I read this, you'll be able to see that. Okay, so these are the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales, the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself can dramatically improve the life of the reader. And let me give you a simple example of how that can work. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know about a person is what the person's motivation is. Why is this person doing this? So you could look at the scale. I've gotten it down to 7 basic motivations, and all the others are just subsets of these.
Yeah.
Because you're selecting from a menu of only 7, it's not hard to do. So, sometimes you go to a restaurant, they have like 300 things on the menu, right? That's much more difficult, unless you really want to spend an hour going through the whole thing. Whereas if you go to In-N-Out Burger, what do they have? 7 things,
Right.
hamburger, cheeseburger, French fries, chocolate shakes, that it's an easy choice, right? So you can take the scale of motivation and you could ask yourself, if you wish, what's my motivation toward my mother? What's my motivation toward my father? What's my motivation toward my boyfriend? What's my motivation toward my next door neighbor? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you could determine your motivation toward everyone in your life and everyone you've ever known. Because you know these people. That's not the issue. But now you have a way to parse it, to make it precise. And when you spot it, you will have a realization. Ah, that's my motivation for this. That's why I do that. See? In other words, you're having insight into yourself. Then you could take the same scale and you could reverse the vector and say, what's my next door neighbor's motivation toward me? What is my boss's motivation toward me? What is my Uncle Joe's motivation toward, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You could use it another 200 or 300 or 400 different ways on this opposite vector. So by the time you go through your whole life like that, you now know your motivation toward everyone and their motivation toward you.
Right.
It's not hard to do. It's just that I'm giving you the data now. So you look at Fred, this guy you went out with and you broke up. What was Fred's motivation? Right? Now I see what his motivation. That's why we broke up. See, he had a different motivation from me. So every time you do this, you have an insight. So by the time you finish this one exercise that I just defined, you would have had hundreds of insights.
Yeah, I believe that.
So your mind is clearer. So your whole approach, even to people you have never met now, is going to be different. Because you can meet some guy at first blush, right? You're standing at a bus stop and some guy says, do you have the time, right? And you start talking to him, right? Turns out you're both into football or whatever it is, right? Well, you can spot, this guy's got this motivation. See? Just like that. You understand him. I'm not saying to tell him, you shouldn't tell him.
Right, right.
You know what it is, okay? So like, let's say you meet some guy on a date, right? And you're talking and the guy's motivation is revealed. I don't want to go out with somebody who has that motivation. I'm looking for somebody with a different motivation. See? So it saves you a lot of trouble. He might be a nice guy, but not what you're looking for. You say, you're a nice guy, Joe, but we're done.
Yeah.
Saves you wasting 4 or 5 more dates until you figure this out.
Well, it really takes away a lot of the emotion and morality from
That's
so
right.
many of the decisions that we're making. And I love what you're saying, because something that I preach a lot to clients and on the show is, when you know yourself better, you understand everyone around you better,
Right.
because you can hear the same patterns. Like, when you understand why you did what you did, you then understand why they did what they did, and you stop taking things so personally. So I feel a little
That's
dumb
right.
asking this question, but are you basically teaching people how to access deeper into their subconscious?
Well, let me say this. As a human development engineer, my whole career was to get them to access the subconscious. And I
Mm-hmm.
used biofeedback to guide the person into that, because the meter would tell me something that he did not know.
Uh-huh.
So I knew what question to ask.
Mm.
So I interview the guy, right? And I say, I just, no charge, just talking to get to know, well, how's your relationship with your mother, right? And when I ask him that, the meter goes, boom.
Oh gosh.
Okay, we know where to dig, right? So we get into the session and I say, tell me about your relationship with your mother. Boom.
Yeah.
Now, as he's talking, the meter tells me other things, because if it works one way, it means he's upset with her. If it looks another way, it means he has a secret from her. If it works another way, it means he's tired of being around her. See, these are different phenomena. So I could ask him, do you have a secret from your mother? And the biofeedback goes, kaboom.
Yeah.
How did you know?
Oh God, I
Yeah.
bet you were asked that so much. How did you know?
Actually, not a lot, because the
Really?
guy, because the guy's into his thing. See, I'm asking, do you have a secret? And he'll say, well, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. Tell me about it. See, and then tell me that. Oh, this goes all the way back to when I was smoking when I was a kid, and I kept it a secret, and that's when I got mad at my. See, and his whole thing starts to unravel.
Yeah.
See, but as far as Septemics, everything is in the book.
Yeah.
I wrote the book in such a way that once you have the book, you don't need anything else except perhaps a dictionary. But I would say that for every book on earth. Now,
Right.
I've been tutoring people since I was 14, and I would never tutor anybody on anything without having a dictionary handy,
Yeah.
because most people don't know what words mean and don't know that they don't know.
True.
And I can sort of see this when I'm talking to the guy. So I never ask the guy, do you know what this means? Never. I say, what's the definition of electron? See, if he can't give me a correct answer in 1 second, I say, let's look it up. And then we look it up, and I get him to really look at it. See, and he's going to say, oh, yeah, there's this other definition. I didn't know that. See, and then we go back to the material, and now we understand. So that's part of my tutoring practice and working with my clients, because you will find the most amazing things that people think they understand and don't.
So true.
Sometimes they have complete misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client I worked with for a couple of years. This was a rich person. She had her own business, lived in a magnificent house and everything. And she didn't know what the word ethics meant. She kept using it, but I could see from the way she was using it that. So I finally asked her, what does that word mean? And she gave me some gobbledygook. And I said, okay, let's look it up. See? Oh, that's what that means. See? Because that changes the person. How is a person going to be ethical if he doesn't know what the word ethics means?
Right.
So, that's like part of what I did. But as far as the book, once you have this book, you don't need to hire a tutor, to hire a facilitator, to join a church, to join a club. You don't need to do any of that. Now, as far as having a dictionary, everybody has one in his pocket now on his phone.
So true, which I love.
Also, if you look in the book, there is a glossary Not only in front of every chapter, even in front of the introduction, there's a lesson.
Wow.
So I'm telling you the specific meaning of the word that's being used. So I went out of my way to make this easy. And many people have said, yeah, the glossaries really helped me.
Yeah, I love that. Your commitment to the level of understanding is impressive.
Right. So that was my career. I mean, if you think about as a human development engineer, I was bringing these people to understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Guy, let's say he's a drunk. All right. I've had some guys who had drinking problems who came to me. They didn't understand what was going on with that. They may have thought they did, but clearly they didn't because they couldn't resolve it.
Right.
So I would bring them. So the guy would say, "Oh, now I understand why I drink so much.
Mm-hmm.
I was becoming my father because he drank a lot, and I just sort of became like him. That's like news to this guy."
Yeah.
So now someone else could come along and point that out. That doesn't help the guy.
Right.
He's got to get it himself. It's the same thing with Septemics. I tell everyone, never tell anyone the level of any person on any scale. It's counterproductive and unethical because every time a person finds either himself or another on any scale, he has a realization.
Mm-hmm.
That happens 100% of the time. That is one of the ways you found the right level.
Right.
Right? So you're thinking about, I have a lot of trouble with my mother-in-law. Let me see if I can analyze it, right? Right? So let's see. Where is she on the scale of choice? Choice is a big thing in people's lives, being able to, how they choose things, being able. So you look, she's at level 4. That explains why she does this and this and this and this. Now you know how to deal with her. See, she's at that level.
Yeah.
So you know. Now, let me give you an analogy so you understand this perfectly. Let's say you invited me to your house to look at your garden. I don't even know if you have a garden, but if you did, and you might say, Jim, you like flowers? Come over and look at my garden. I do like flowers. So I go to Melissa's garden, right? And I walk in the garden and I say, oh, Melissa has hydrangeas, irises, forget-me-nots, chrysanthemums, tulips, roses, begonias. Now, the reason that I can analyze it like that is I know all about flowers because I've been taking care of them since I was a little boy. And I have several people in my family who are in that business. So if you want, I could advise you. This needs a lot of water. This needs less water. This should be in the shade. This should be in the sun. Bop, 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 bop. If you want to pick this one, that's fine. If you want to pick this one, you better put on gloves first. So, there's a lot to know about that, right? Now,
Yeah.
if you bring a 5-year-old kid into your garden, this mythical garden, and he looks at it, he's going to see and smell exactly what I saw and smelled. But all he can say is, these are pretty and they smell nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he can say. He doesn't know the difference between a chrysanthemum and a hydrangea. He doesn't even know those words. All he knows is that he likes them because they're pretty. Now, most adults are like that little kid as regards people.
You're so right. You're exactly
They
right.
don't know what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, history, and when I say history, not just the way we study history in school, but all history, including the
Right.
history of literature, the history of cinema, it's full of this.
Absolutely.
So, why did they crucify Jesus? Did they understand him?
Right.
The people who understood him became his followers. But clearly, the people who tortured him to death did not understand him. So clearly, somebody is not understanding something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why most people in the United States aren't even married now. That wasn't true 50 years ago.
Right.
Because the lack of understanding is at such a level now that, people are actually afraid of people.
Mm-hmm.
So this book solves that whole problem
I'm excited
because
about it.
because every human being is at some level on every scale.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural law. It's like your blood pressure. You have a blood pressure right now. I don't know what it is, and I don't think you know what it is.
I do not
But
know.
but if you went to the doctor, right? I'm sure you noticed one of the first things they do every time you show up. It doesn't matter if you have bunions or an earache or a runny nose. They take your blood pressure, right?
Right.
You know why? Because they know you have one, but they don't know what it is.
Right.
So they take, oh, okay, and they write it down. Blah, blah, blah. Now we know. So, because that tells them things if it's too high or too low or whatever, right? So, there's a lot of things, they check your heartbeat, your pulse, and tells them things. So, your level on a septemic scale is like your blood pressure. You have it, you just don't know what it is.
Right.
So, I'm giving you the data to resolve all of this. So, let me tell you for whom this book is written. If you can speak English, or I should say read English reasonably well, and you want to improve yourself or others, this book is for you.
And where can we get it?
Uh, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, it's wherever books are sold. If you
Okay.
just type Septemics into a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses, including all the people selling the book. Acme Bookstore in Dayton, Ohio. You know,
Right.
it's easy to find. So,
Okay.
so uh, it's a very user-friendly thing. I went out of my way to write this in a way where it would wrap around the reader. So the way you experience this, even though it's got math underneath it, the way you experience it's not like studying math. It's like putting on your glasses and looking in the mirror.
Right. It's just being able to see for the first time.
Yeah, you see what's there. So I'll tell you a story. I'm a single guy. So about 6 months ago, I met this gorgeous blonde. She looked like a movie actress, glamorous, congenial, everything that would be attractive at first blush to a regular man. So now we're going through, there's a lot of interaction between us. What do you do for a living? What do you like to do on the weekends? All that preliminary stuff that happens at the beginning of a relationship. Finding
Mm-hmm.
out, you know, uh, how many children do you have? Whatever. So I started to notice we had like 6 or 8 conversations like that, which is normal,
Yeah.
when you meet somebody. So so we had a conversation. I noticed, she's low on this scale. Okay, wait a minute to know. So we had another conversation. She's low on this other scale. And we had another conversation. She's low on this other scale. Now the light bulb was going on over my head. Wait a minute. This is a downscale person. So do I want to get involved with this? Tony Curtis famously said that kissing Marilyn Monroe is like kissing Hitler.
Oh God. I've
And
never heard that.
there was a whole room full of witnesses to this. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's common knowledge because they made that movie together where you had this
Yeah.
love scene, right? And he said this gratuitously when they showed the film, Some Like It Hot. He looked at it, and after the movie ended, he stood up and he said, "It was like kissing Hitler." So obviously, they're not going to be a couple, right?
Right.
So I looked at this and said, "I'm not going to get involved with this. This is a train wreck waiting to happen." And I dismissed her. I said, "No thanks, pass." She was shocked,
Right.
visibly shocked. She couldn't believe it. She said, "Who do you think you are?" I did not say to her the best answer, which was, "I'm the guy who knows Septemics." Because it wouldn't have meant anything to her because she didn't know what that is.
Right.
But the point was, most guys would have jumped right in and then had a train wreck
Uh-huh.
and wound up talking to a therapist about it. right? So I just bypassed the whole thing.
I love the way you phrase that. Yeah, we just skip to the end.
And I do that all the time with people. I meet, I have thousands of people all over the world reading my book.
Yeah.
So I've done over 350 interviews. So I know a lot of people. And this happens continually. I meet some guy who could either be online or in 3 dimensions, and I can say, whoa, this guy's at level 6 on the scale of control. Well, if you look that up, that is not a good place to be. Okay. So we're done. Okay. Have a nice day. Wish you the best of luck. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And so I can absolutely guarantee to you and your listeners that this book, if you read it and use it, will prevent catastrophes, dilemmas, nervous breakdowns, divorces, fistfights, arguments. Because when you see these low scale people, you're forewarned. You're not going to get fooled. Now, look, when I was a young man, this data didn't exist. I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
So I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes.
Right.
Because I got involved with people I shouldn't have been involved with, and then I regretted it later. Now, later in life, I understand, okay, that person was a bop and a bop and a bop, and I shouldn't have gotten involved, but I didn't know any better at 19 or whatever.
Right.
So now, for me, that cannot happen, does not happen, will not happen. So I know what I'm dealing with.
Absolutely.
So I know how to handle people, because the subtext of this is analysis, prediction, and management of human affairs, because this is a system for analyzing human phenomena.
Mhm.
And after you analyze it, you can then predict what's going to happen, what the person's going to do, how you're going to get along. And as a result of that, you can then manage it. Now, sometimes you have people you can't get away from, right? Like your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, right? There's no getting away from them, right? But you can analyze that person across all 35 scales, and you will understand them better than they understand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that facilitates the relationship. You know what not to do. So this goes on for me all the time. And I'll just give you a simple example. I have 3 sisters. 2 of them are conservatives and 1 is a liberal, right? They have mutually exclusive ideas about politics. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I get along fine with all of them, because when the subject comes up, I just tiptoe around it because I know it's there.
Right.
There's not going to be an argument or a fight or anything because I know that's like a simple way of explaining this, which is a much more sophisticated analysis of that. Where you
Mm-hmm.
can see, so for example, I met somebody about 10 years ago, and I could see in our first meeting that this was an upscale person. I could see this person is high in this scale, high in this scale, high in this scale, high in this scale. This is an upscale person. I knew right then, this is somebody I want in my life. And I've remained connected with this person to this day. And it has been a pleasure all the way, because I could see,
Yeah.
I knew what I was looking at. You see,
Yeah.
it was not vague to me. Now, it's not that this person is high on every scale. Very few people are, less than 1%. But in the areas where she's a little downscale, I can see that too. So I just tiptoe around it.
Yeah.
So we can still get along, even though she's got this little thing that's not quite right. It's not an issue because I know what it is. See?
Yeah. Well, I'm
So-
really excited. I'm gonna get the book for sure. And I'm blown away by this entire conversation. I am so excited that I'm learning about it, because I think you're right. I think it's revolutionary. I appreciate your willingness to come on and talk about it. You've been such a lovely guest, and Wow, yeah, a lot to think about. I will certainly be sharing it with others too. I'm just really excited about it. I think it's really helpful when, as a therapist, I would say that there are, times where we can get wrapped up in emotions no matter what our brains know. But I think the knowing is the first and most important step. Like and I love the way you have categorized things. I love the analytics, hearing about it. I think you're exactly right. I think it's exactly what people need, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you
Right.
so much for coming on and sharing about it. Thank you for making this your life's work. You're right, it's very valuable, and I hope that you're seeing, reaping the rewards of all that hard work.
Well, my motto in this regard is your success is my reward.
Yeah,
That's how I think about it. So
that's
there are
awesome.
people I'm never going to know who are getting this book and straightening out their lives. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, Jim. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Mine too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Emotionally unavailable.
Hey, if you have not provided this podcast with a rating, please go do that now. If you find me on social media, you can see my link tree, and it will take you to both Spotify or Apple for you to leave a review and a rating. 5-star, obviously, so much. Okay. Also, on that link tree, you can get to my website, empoweredwithmelissahepner.org, where you can sign up for a one-on-one session with me. I'm calling these guidance sessions because I will utilize my therapeutic background along with tarot and astrological insights, if you're comfy, and guide you to the life that you're in love with. And if none of my current offers are within your budget, please don't hesitate to select the complimentary session option. I created that option as part of a commitment to my community and to access to mental health care. And I want to make sure that people are using that. So feel free to refer that link out to anyone that you want to. It is a one-time only. All of these sessions are like a one-time, so that I can make a bigger impact with one-time sessions versus recurring sessions. So you can see my menu on my website, and you will also see workbooks and membership communities available. So I hope you'll check it out.
Emotionally unavailable. Emotionally unavailable.
INDEPE and cut.